Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Good morning to all you jewelry makers.
Good morning.
Whoops. Mute the stream. How does that sneak up on us every time? Even if you attempt to, even if you think you've clicked the mute, when it pops on, it just does what it wants to do. So it is a lovely gray, rainy fall morning here. So you guys know I'm happy about that because we've been waiting for rain and now we're getting it. So yay. All right, so today's demo is this bracelet you can call it anything you want. What I named it when I decided to put it on the website was Jardin Gemstone Bracelet. And the reason it's Jardin is because these crimp beads and the button and well, that's it on this version. The crimp beads and the button are from our Dolce Vita collection. And I am going to throw some links in for you guys. I've got some set up for you. So let me grab those. Our Dolce Vita collection was a line that we launched a few years back. And it was so popular that we added to it a year or two later. And it's inspired by polymer metal clay. So, you know, with polymer metal clay, I don't know if you guys have ever played with it. It's really fun to play with. It's a clay, and what you can do is just get all kinds of textures. You can roll it. You can use different things to create textures in your clay, and then you shape it and you fire it. And depending on what it is, there's silver polymer metal clay, and there's other metals as well. So then when you fire it, it burns off the binder and you get a metal piece. And so that's what polymer metal clay is. And we were inspired by that medium and the technique to create a series of components that has kind of that lovely, find in my camera, sorry guys, that has some lovely texture. So the development process of this launch was a bear because the product development team just went crazy with different textures and different shapes. And it was a big company-wide process. They would lay out all these shapes and different textures, and then get everybody in the company to come and look and say, well, and vote, basically. We like this one, we like that one. Oh, I don't like this one. This is a good shape. What about this? So it was really a fun process. And we came up with some really beautiful things that we put together into our, what we call a Dolce Vita collection. And Dolce Vita, it means sweet life. So we liked that. It's got a little bit of floral components, a little bit of floral motif, and then also some kind of viney, leafy kind of motif. So some of the components are called flora, if they're more floral oriented, and some of them are called Jardin, which is garden, basically. And that's a little more viney type of vines and leaves type of motif. So that's our Dolce Vita collection. I put a link in there, and I also put a link into the project. Hello, Lena. Lena's procrastinating, but she's allowed. Hello, Landa. Hello, Lynn. Nice to see you guys. Hi, Lois. And if any of you are members of the Great Beat Extravaganza, I did demo this in that group a couple of weeks ago. But this demo, I wanted to do it again on our own Facebook page and be able to share it to other groups. And it's also the one that will end up going onto YouTube and onto the product page on our website. So yeah, Landa, I love that collection too. It's just beautiful. Hi, Cindy. So I'm going to switch my camera. And I was just saying that I can't even say that this one is the original bracelet, but we did take this bracelet design to Tucson after we launched the products, and it was one of our inspiration projects for our customer event, and they loved it. I really don't know why it took me so long to get this design ready to go up on the inspiration section of the website. It just, you know, we've had a lot going on. So it took a while. I'm so glad I got it up there this fall. And this was one of the variations that came back from Tucson with us, and it is made with the brass ox components. Something that you need for this design, in addition to our own large hole spacers and the Dolce Vita components and a button, is that you need 2mm cord. This is leather cord, of course, but you can use whatever 2mm cord you prefer. And you also need large hole gemstones. I found that 8 to 9mm worked best for this particular variation. But one of the things I'm going to play with today, because gift giving season is coming up. So, you know, you're always thinking of different things to make for loved ones. And I thought I love the original feel of this one. It's very boho. It's a little bit rustic, but I wanted to really brighten it up. So I'm going to do a gold and blue. I'm going to do a gold and blue. Sorry, I want to get back to where I can see the comments. Hi, Kimberly. Hi, Tammy. Gold and blue with a lighter cord. I thought that would make a nice variation. And then I also want to do a man's version. So I've got some black cord, and with this one, I've got some slightly larger gemstone beads. And I'm a little unclear which ones I'm going to use, because I started playing around with them before I left yesterday and got overwhelmed by my choices. So we'll have to decide on the fly which one we do for the guys version. But I'll start with the women's. And you can adjust the size of this as you're making. When you get down to like close to the end of the project, that's when you adjust the size. So a good general length of cord to start with is 16 inches. If you have a very large wrist, you might want to give yourself a little longer. And the first thing we're going to do is thread a 2-hole button. We're going to fold the cord in half and thread a 2-hole button all the way up to the fold. So it's sitting right there. And then I am going to string on one of our Jardin barrel beads, and I'm going to crimp that. I'm going to tighten that down right up there near the button. It doesn't have to be too close. I'm going to allow about 1/4 inch in there, and I'm going to use some parallel pliers. These are my favorite for crimping these, because they have, you guys have heard me say this if you watch these, they have a parallel action so that the pressure comes down evenly, which is real nice for when you're crimping these. You can also use chain nose and flat nose pliers, but you have to kind of go around, because those pliers come down at an angle, you know. You have to go from all the directions to make sure your crimp bead is secure. So now I've got my first barrel bead on. I'm actually going to add a second one now. This is when I'm adding all of the components that will be the focal section of this bracelet. So I've got a barrel bead. I'm using our 5mm large hole nugget spacers in the bright gold finish for this variation. And then I've got some 8mm large hole faceted gemstone beads. I don't know what gemstone this is, but it's such a beautiful light, bright blue. I thought it would look great with the gold. So I strung on 2 of the 8mm. I've also got some slightly larger ones here in the same type of stone. So those are going to go in the center, because that way I'll get a little bit of a graduated thing there. So I've got gemstones, the 7mm large hole nugget spacers, and then I'll string on those larger gemstones. Follow it with the 7mm nuggets again. And then the 2 8mm rondelles. Whoops, wait a minute, did I mess it up? No, but it looks like I have this rondelle slightly larger than this one. So I want to maybe fish around in my stash and find a smaller one. Yeah, that's better. And then slide those all up and finish up finish up with 2 more of the 5mm nugget spacers. And let me throw in, you know, we have, as you guys probably know already, we have a wide selection of components that we made to work with cords and larger stringing materials. So I'm throwing a link into the comments for our large hole products. So those are just things that you can use with cords and larger hole or larger stringing materials. So throwing that link in there for you. So I just want to double check this. I want to make sure I've got everything on there. Spacers, yep, everything looks even and everything's there. And now I'm just going to leave that alone. I will adjust this, the placement of it, as we get closer to the end of the process here. So here's where I'm going to decide how long I want my bracelet. So if I go with, if I position my, you notice, I don't know if I said it out loud, but I strung on one final barrel bead. And if I, let me slide these out of the way a little bit. If I position these about 5 inches apart, these two, I'm going to end up, at the end, I'll end up with a bracelet that's about 7 inches, because then I will be, let's see, 1 to 6. And then I'm going to be tying a knot right here, and this will be my button loop. So that's going to give me about a 7-inch bracelet. So this is where you decide. Actually, it's looking more like about 5.5 inches apart gives you about a 7-inch bracelet. This is where you want to decide how long it's going to be. Hello, Alicia and Spidey Samps. Hi. And Zona and Emily. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for popping in. So I have a small wrist. A 7 is great for me. If you want it to be a little bit bigger, you would just slide this down a little more and make your final knot down here. So let's see. If I put it right about, if I put my barrel bead here and tie my knot here, that's going to give me about a 7.5-inch bracelet. So I think that that's what we'll do for this one. So I'm just going to take my parallel pliers and crimp that last one. And you can see that if you get long, if you decide on a longer bracelet, you do need to give yourself longer cord to start with, because now I have to tie a double knot. I mean, I have to tie an overhand knot here, and that's going to be tricky because I got to get this knot tied with a very short piece of cord. I think I can do it. It might be a tiny bit fussy, and I might have to use pliers. And this cord is this light colored cord is a little bit stiff. So wish me luck here. I might not have given myself enough cord. All right, so this is what I'm gonna do. I already crimped this, and I crimped it so well that I can't move it. So we're gonna make an adjustment on the fly. I don't think that I can get a knot tied in here. I could do a couple of things. I can either put another barrel bead here, which is what I think I'm going to do, but I have to go grab one. Or I could take a little bit of wire and do a wire wrap thing. I just need to do something to secure the two cords together. So that I have a button loop. So let's just grab another one of these. It's always good to have options, right? So for this particular design, you really, if you're using 16 inches, you're going to get a 7-inch bracelet. If you're going to go with anything longer, definitely add length to your cord that you cut. But for now, we just added another barrel bead to make our button loop. And that works. So the final thing that I'm going to do is now adjust my center focal section. I want to place that right between, like evenly between the, well, in the center. I want to place it evenly between the barrel beads. And I'm kind of nudging my beads because I want to get them kind of lined up as evenly as possible before I crimp them, before I crimp the barrel beads and cinch everything into place. And it looks pretty even. And that's it. I like this variation with the brighter gold finish. Hi, Michelle. And hi, Cassandra. Nice to see you. I do like the bright gold. It really brightens it up. So if you were making this for a gift for someone who was a little less boho and liked the gold, this would be a nice variation for them. All right, so moving on to the, I don't know where all this debris is coming from on my work mat. Moving on to the men's version. I started with, I cut a piece of cord that is, I'm off screen for the moment, but I cut about 24 inches because I really wanted to make sure that I had plenty, because, you know, a bigger wrist. And also, what I don't have to show you is a variation that I'm going to do for this one that uses a lobster clasp and our crimpable. I'm going to have to sort out my parts here, see what I need. Oh, here we go. I want the bright silver. Some of our crimpable components, these ones are not our Dolce Vita ones. These ones are our distressed. They kind of go well with our hammer tone products. So they come in a pewter finish and also a bright silver. So I want to use the bright silver is actually our white bronze plate. So that's the one I want to use for this, I think. So what I'm going to do with this one is, instead of using a button as the closure, I'm going to use a lobster clasp, which means, hold on just a sec, I want to pull up a picture for my own, remind myself how I did this, which is on the website. Hold on. I got to go to the link I sent you guys. Because what I have to do now is, instead of adding the button and using barrel beads, I'm going to be using the crimp ends that have a loop that's for finishing a design, and it has a loop that you then attach your closure with, in this case, a lobster clasp. So I just added a picture to the project page yesterday that has that other variation. So if you guys click that link that I included, you will see a variation that's got those crimp ends and a lobster clasp instead of the button closure. So what I'm going to do, instead of folding it in half, I'm actually going to cut it in half. And then I'm going to just pop some ends. Also, as you might be aware, when you use leather cord, it can really vary in thickness. So this is a really hefty 2mm leather cord. So I'm trimming my ends at a little bit of an angle so that I can make sure that they're going to fit in the opening of this crimp end that is made with a 4mm, words are hard, 4mm by 2mm opening. so depending on the cord, sometimes it's really thick. You want to make sure that that's going to fit. So if I trim the ends at a slight angle, I can tuck those cords in there a little bit easier. So I've got those in there, and I'm going to crimp that down. And this is also where you could use an adhesive instead or in addition to the crimping. You can put a little bit of a gel super glue. The Loctite gel super glue works well. Super new glue works well. But crimping it is also, you know, just you got to make sure it's secure. You got to test it, and this one's good. So I've got one end on. Now I'm going to play with my focal section. So I'm going to follow the same basic pattern, but I'm going to use some, because my center beads are quite a bit bigger, because I just want this to be a little bit more substantial, because it's in theory for a man. I've got some different gemstone large hole kind of disc beads here. And then I have this very pretty, I'm not sure if this is a picture jasper or if it's wood opalite, but I love it. And I just have to decide what to put it with. And I think I'm going to go with this one. Oops, need that. So these are a little bit bigger. So because they're a little bit bigger, I'm going to use one of our large hole separator bars. It's a 3-hole separator bar, but I'm stringing one cord through each of the outer holes. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep this focal section, it's going to spread it out a little bit to make a little more room for those larger beads. So that's why when I was playing with this design yesterday, that was the kind of solution that I figured out. Otherwise, all of these beads were kind of getting lopsided and kind of staggered because they were just too tight together. So this spacer bar is a good solution to create a little more opening here for the focal components. So then I'm also going with just the larger 7mm large hole nugget beads instead of the 5. So one of those on each strand of cord, and then one each of the picture jasper or whatever it is we decided that is. And then I've got, instead of the 7mm nugget now next to the biggest bead, I've got, these are our hammer tone large hole spacers. They're about a 10mm spacer with a large hole. They're really nice. And those will pop up for you in that link that I sent you that goes to our large hole components. Hello, Zona. Hello, Nancy. Thank you for popping in to watch. This is a great design, I think, for gift giving. Obviously, we're adapting it to different styles, you know, for brighter colors. And this is a design that we're kind of adapting for the guys. So I'm using some black cord and some bigger gemstone beads. I've got all the stones and the spacers in there. And again, I'm double checking to make sure I got everything on there. And then I'll put on this second separator bar. Hi, Pammy. And then now that I've got all those on, I can string on the second barrel bead and tuck the rest of these large hole beads out of the way. I've got one more of those, which is important. I need that. And this is where, again, we have to decide how long we're going to make this bracelet. And this is for a guy. So I don't know. How big does that need to be? 9 inches? Is that a good man's general size? I'm really guessing, guys, because I do not make bracelets for men very often. But it seems like maybe that circumference would be good. So let's see how long that is. That is, that will be, once we get the clasp on, about 9 inches. So that's what I'm going to go for. Hopefully it will fit somebody. I'm trying to keep my thumbs in that spot because now I'm going to cut the cord right there. And I'm also pulling these to make sure that everything's really nice and straight before I put on that second end, because I do want things to be even. I don't need the ruler anymore. And again, let's trim these at a little bit of an angle so that they're easier to get into that cord end. 8 to 9 inches for a man's bracelet. Yeah, I think that this will work. I am using 2 millimeter for the man's as well. And I suppose you could, certainly come up with a variation of this design using a thicker cord, but it wouldn't work with our cord ends. What do you think, guys? Is this going to be too big? I'm going to measure again. Yes, once I add that lobster clasp, it's going to bring that to about almost 10 inches, 9.5. So let's trim a little off. I mean, we want it to fit your average guy, maybe a really, really large guy's wrist, but okay. And then crimp that last one down. And again, check that and make sure it's good. All right, and then this is where we get to align our focal section so it's centered on the bracelet. And you see how these spacer beads just add more room? I think it really worked well for these bigger beads. So 8.5, which means I want my focal section. Sometimes math is hard, guys. I lined this up so that it's kind of roughly at 8 inches. It's really a little bit longer than that, but to make the math easier, I'm just nudging it on my ruler so that the center will line up with the 4, right between the 8. It's 8 inches long, so right in between. And then I just need to slide my barrel beads and slide my focal so that they're centered. And then crimp these barrel beads down. Oh, Lynn, you're right. Huh. Pammy's just saying that her brother-in-law likes to wear his bracelet over his sleeve. So his bracelets, he goes with the 9.5 to 10 inches. And I like Pam is saying the beater's version of Cinderella, looking for a wrist that fits that bracelet. I'd like to be a little more intentional, make sure what I'm going to give somebody hopefully will fit, but yeah. Lynn is suggesting that the hammer tone magnetic clasp would work well. So I like that suggestion. I'm going to grab one. And we're out of luck because I don't have a silver one in hand, but just so you guys can see what she's talking about. It's our small little hammer tone magnetic clasp that would be just, if I had a silver one in here, that would be just perfect. We do have another magnetic clasp, as long as we're getting out fun things. We do have another magnetic clasp that's really great for men's bracelets. It's we call it our Palace. Is that what we call it? Yes, Palace magnetic. And it's a little bit bigger. It would be too big for this as we designed it. But if we're intending to use that one and just cut down that cord length a little bit, that would be a nice closure too. So, but because I don't have a silver one, we're back to plan A, which is to use a lobster clasp. But that was a good suggestion, Lynn. I like that idea. Hello, Yolanda. Thank you for joining us. I just need two of our, oh, you know what? I've got those are the 4x3 oval class jump rings, but I think I want the larger one. This one is about a 5x6. A little bit bigger, since this is a guy's bracelet, that would be suitable, right? Hi, Shelley. Nice to see you. And Lynn is commenting on the magnets in those clasps. And it is, we really did do a lot of research and try to find magnets that we knew were going to be strong and hold well. So yeah, our magnets are nice and strong. So I'm just using those two oval jump rings in the loops at the ends. And let's see, I've got this oval jump ring on the other side, which will work. You could also add another round jump ring just for a little bit of to act as sort of a ring to grab. That's I think it's kind of optional. I think that the oval that's connected there is just fine. So that is that. And those jump rings in the clasp did take up a little more because I ended up going with the larger jump ring. That did add some length. So be sure and consider that when you're designing yours, which jump rings you're going to use, because they'll add some length. I love this. I think it's fab. That would be a great bracelet for the guys on your list. And, you know, you can play with different gemstones and come up with different combinations for your different people. Hi, Debbie Barnett. Thank you for joining us. So, oh, there's a comment that Kimberly's making. The nice thing about the styles, if you're making these for a craft show, you could have a few off to the side without crimp ends and then make them to order right there at the craft show. That is very smart, Kimberly. That's a great idea. Just have them kind of set up except for that last little closure bit. Very smart. Okay, I'm going to switch my camera. I think we've had enough fun with the work surface. And I see that we got really crooked. The work mat got a little crooked. I hope I stayed in focus and on camera, guys. So that's a great project. Thank you guys for joining me for that. It's a good one. Would make awesome holiday gifts for the holidays or for whatever. So thank you guys for joining me for that. And as always, you can download this, the instruction sheet off of the website. My hair is a disaster right now, but you can download this off of the website and have fun with it. Hope you enjoyed it, and not quite sure what I'm going to do next week. But also this weekend, if you're a member of the Great Beat Extravaganza group, this is the weekend. We kick things off Friday night with kind of an opening video, and where we just talk about what we're going to do. You'll get a little preview of what everyone's plans are, and then all the demonstration and presentation videos start the next morning on Saturday morning. So the TierraCast time slot is Sunday at 1 p.m. Pacific time. That's the 14th. So I hope to see you guys, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.